I'm starting to hit my breaking point a little bit here, I think, with the whole will they, won't they merge? And even if they do, then what happens?
Yep.
Because that's the one thing, KP, that there hasn't been any good answers for. There haven't really been any answers for. Some guys will say, hey, let them back, no penalty. Some will say that's crazy. Some will say we're all going to live, or those live guys are coming back, or what Rory McIlroy was alluding to after his third round at Riviera, which is essentially creating a tour for the top 80 on top of the PGA Tour and Live Golf. That's like some of the very few actual thoughts that people have offered for a solution.
Yeah, you wrote a really good post on this on your newsletter website, essentially, not rickandgood.com, but your newsletters. Did you put it on rickandgood.com?
Yes, I could. I didn't really expect. I was mostly just like an exercise for myself. And
yes.
But I should probably drop it on rickandgood.com too.
It got a lot of feedback, huh?
Good, bad, and indifferent. Yeah. So I don't know if we have this, Josh, or if you can bring it up, but there are some accompanying exhibits, so to speak, where what I did is I took the concept.
This is like the Congress thing. You got a poster board.
that Rory said top 80 on a world tour, and he said that all other leagues should, quote, feed up to that one, which is a model we've seen around the world. So I started putting, level 1, that's your World Golf Tour, level 2, PGA Tour and Live, level 3, Korn Ferry and the DP, level 4 and level 5, basically everything else below that, which is, I think, the way that European soccer does it.
Yeah. Sorry, Kyle. I saw that and I thought of the European soccer leagues. It's a super cool idea. I just want to say that there were complaints about the World Golf Championships events, which was ostensibly the same thing. So I still thought what you wrote was fantastic.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And you know what? I'm so sick of players complaining about stuff. Like, figure it out. You just got $3 billion. Like, I don't really care if you have to fly to Australia. I just don't. I think that's what's getting lost in all this, and people have made this point and will continue to make it, is like, who's thinking about like what's the best product for the fans? Patrick Cantlay is thinking about what's the best product for Patrick Cantlay, and the SSG is thinking about what's the best product for the investment that we made. And all these people are incentivized to think about themselves. And it's like, yeah, I don't really care, man. Like, I don't care that you have to travel. I just don't. Like, I think it's kind of weird that we talk about like, oh, well, the players, like what we don't do this in, like, I don't care that Bill Belichick has to fly across the country every week to play in San Francisco, whatever. Like, it's kind of weird that we do this in golf, and maybe that's an individual sport thing, but I think there are a few quibbles that I have, Rick, with like the details of what you wrote. But broadly speaking, I mean, I've been writing about this concept for like 8 years now, and I think it would be amazing. I just don't know. I think Live is, well, I don't know. Maybe Live isn't the linchpin that's holding it up, but it seems like Live and maybe the power that the players have on the PGA Tour are both kind of holding it up, which are two pretty big linchpins.
I just want to say real fast. Sorry, Greg.
Go ahead.
How about Mackenzie Hughes on network television in a walk and talk? I mean, well, he had said this prior on, I think it was the Sweet Spot podcast with John Sherman and Adam Young. Jim Nance after that was like, wow, that's exactly what we needed. We needed a player to stand up and speak out and go, yo, we've officially lost the handle on things over here.
Do we have that quote anywhere? Because I saw some of it, but I'd love to, if we can pull up the full quote. Sorry, Greg, go ahead.
No. Raises a couple of issues. The one thing, as it relates to the World Tour, I really enjoyed Mackenzie Hughes' comments. They were definitely directed towards the fans. And after reading, Rick, your idea and concept, I like the general concept. And it's an actual solution, which I like. I don't like complaining without solutions. But there are a couple of problems that arise from it.
Let's quibble.
like this. But one is, well, and again, sadly, it's financial, a lot of it. Like, who would own this? That's a big question.
Yeah. So one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I got was basically, why would the PGA Tour let the top 80 players go to a new entity? And my answer is they would own the new entity. And also, they don't have a lot of choice. If the players want to do that, they're already building a for-profit entity on top of the PGA Tour.
So you kind of see it as like SSG, PIF,
yes,
the PGA Tour all own it.
Creates the World Golf Tour, whatever they want to call it. Maybe calling it the World Golf Tour made it seem like it was something completely different. Call it PGA Tour Plus, and that's the concept here.
Okay, so that definitely makes sense. Now, since they're involved, these next two are probably simplified, but two thoughts I had were Live is a contract-based system. I think that complicates things.
Yeah.
And SSG offering equity, it seems like if there's relegation year over year, there's no real job security. Equity and contracts both would get very complicated. And maybe they just go away. Maybe both those things go away. Or there's some way. I mean, I don't even know how SSG and the PGA Tour are divvying up equity. I don't really understand that.
I don't either. I was reading an article by Sean Zock today. I think it was on golf.com. And he was laying out this. So lacrosse did this a few years ago, apparently, like 4 or 5 years ago, where they created a new lacrosse league and then they merged with the old league. And they did the equity thing and all that. And in it, he was talking about how like the players are kind of in the dark about the equity thing as well. Like it feels like, well, we'll give Rory like an eighth of it and then we'll figure out the rest. I mean, that's not what anybody has said, but that's sort of what it feels like. I think, Greg, you voiced like the biggest problem with all of this, which is that so many different, and this is just the golf problem in general, is that so many different businesses and organizations control the different entities that would feed into all this, right?
This would take an immense amount of cooperation.
Yes.
Right. Big time cooperation.
Which I think the two most important entities are at their most vulnerable place the place where they're most willing to cooperate because they're the most vulnerable. But you still have to get all it's just the logistics of it. And again, as a fan, you figure that out. That's what the $3 billion is for. That's what the money's for.
So one other, you mentioned this vulnerability. And when I look at the Live system and the Live model, that's a big concern for me, right? If you're trying to generate, you have a team concept, and I know that this is all changeable, but if you have a team concept and the business model is to build value in teams, it seems like it would be difficult to sustain and grow that value when the best players at the end of the year are going to leave your team. So there wouldn't be a whole lot of, hey, the range goats have so-and-so, and I'm a fan of that. Not that I agree with it, or it seems like that would kind of corrupt that model.
Yeah, I hear you, but you look at because we're comparing this to English Premiership football and the English Soccer League. You have stars that are on contract there, and then eventually the contract's out and they move along. There is a way by this, but the problem is this is like government. People are just at a stalemate. My understanding from folks that certain folks think they have more leverage over the others, but with so much money that's changing hands over here, folks are like, there's gridlock. They don't want to give up the money. They just don't.
Yeah.
The way that I laid it out, so I took Rory's comment, the top 80 players, and I just took golfer 1 through 80 from Data Golf's rankings and said these are the 80. Right? I'm not gonna go any. We could argue about that all day long. Liv would lose about 13 guys to this new entity. I actually think that because there is a team aspect, they could weather that because they'd also own a percentage of the new entity as well, right? Assuming that, like, you're assuming that this PIF investment comes in, you're assuming that this new entity is kind of co-owned. They would lose players there. And maybe those players are just out on loan. Maybe they come back and play a couple of events a year. Maybe they could weather it because they're building around and leaning into the team aspect. And just like any sports team, guys retire, guys get traded, guys move on, you lose them to free agency, et cetera, et cetera.
But those things don't typically happen when you have success. Like Patrick Mahomes doesn't win the Super Bowl and then move on. And that's where, that's a big difference. If somebody for the Patriots, a special teams player, retired today, Slater, right? And that happens all the time, but it's not Tom Brady. And it's not because of the success, which I think just is an interesting point.
Yeah, I almost see it as like this, Greg. You're totally right, and I agree with you. I almost see the team aspect bumping up to the top tour, to the 80, or I would probably make it 100, and doing either like F1 where they have teams, but it's maybe not primary, or doing it as like a side 4 or 5 events where you can play alternate shot. You can do some different interesting stuff there, which I think would be really, really cool. And that's, again, one aspect of Live that I've always enjoyed. So you bump the team aspect up to the top 80 or 100, and then Live just becomes like the new European tour. You can call it whatever I don't care what you call it, but it becomes essentially like the path to get to the global, or to, what'd you call it, Rick? The world championship, world tour.
Oh, world tour.
From an international perspective. So you have your American path on the PGA Tour and your international path for, Australians and South Africa, whatever, through Live, or rename it. I call it the Yasser Tour. I don't care. But I just think that like the ease of understanding all this would really make for man, if you knew like, hey, every year the top 100 guys in the world are going to be in this tour, and they're going to go to Tokyo, and they're going to go to Melbourne, and all these, it's very, I thought what you wrote, Rick, was very, very compelling.
So thank you. Now, to talk about where they're going, because Rory did kind of address this too, Mark. So he said that, quote, he believes there is more of an appetite amongst younger Americans to travel globally. He cited Max Homa, Justin Thomas going to South Africa. So those were his words. The way that I laid out the schedule, right? That's what, and listen, that's what the money's for.
There's your appetite.
Yep. That's what the money's for.
Yep.
The money's for. I went with 16 events in 4 majors, giving these players 20 events that they would have to play. Rory said, I think he said 22 or 24. He said
24. That feels like a lot.
It's like a lot. I didn't ask him to do that many. And
but again, I don't care about the player. Like,
you gave them a month off. You were so sad. I mean, you were just
2 months off.
I gave them 2 months off. I didn't send them to Phoenix in July. I sent them to all the places that like these events are normally happening. I picked you get like Adelaide, you get Jeddah, you get some of the crown jewels on Live, you get the crown jewels on the PGA Tour, you add in some national championships, which are the crown jewels on the DP World Tour, you put it all together, let's go, figure it out, $3 billion.
Rick, your schedule was awfully well thought out, and I thought it brought to mind 2 things for me. First off, I thought you were busy. You really thought this through. So I'm wondering then what Mina is thinking, because you're not spending any time with your wife when you're not doing all the stuff you do.
Yeah,
this is what you logged some time on this.
Yeah. Huh? All right, I got a question on the schedule.
Yeah, can we pull it up, producer Josh? I don't know if we can.
I thought it was cool because you whisked folks all around the globe. You some of the great events on the PGA Tour were on your schedule. It was very, very clever. That's why I thought what I did. I'm like, this guy's logging the hours.
Yeah. So I start him in November with some type of rotating opening swing, whether it's Tokyo, South Korea, doing a Far East thing, going to South Africa. I hit
Immelman Open.
Yeah, exactly. I hit Adelaide and the Australian Open in December, which is like basically when those are going to be played anyway. You start in January, Dubai and Jeddah. No problem with either one of those. Phoenix and Riv in February. Players Championship in Bay Hill in March. Masters in Harbour Town in April. PGA and Canadian Open in May. US Open and Memorial in June. Open Championship, Scottish Open in July. You wrap up the year with the French Open and the Spanish Open in the months that they're already played in.
You're just missing the 5th major, the John Deere Classic. I mean, come on now.
It's still on the PGA Tour. It's just not on the World Tour.
So, so that was another thing, KP. People were like, well, now there's only, I'm a big golf fan. Now I want to tune in every single week and watch something. I don't care if it's the Rocket Mortgage. I don't care if it's the John Deere. And my vision is that tour still run. The PGA Tour is filling the gap on every other week.
Totally. And I think we get really hung up on like the names of these things. Like we think about the PGA Tour as only being this certain thing. You can call the thing whatever you want, right? Like just play golf every week with guys that are not quite in the top 80 or top 100. I liked this schedule a lot. I would probably condense it by a month and take 3 months off, Rick. I think that most leagues, like you think about the NBA or the NFL is longer. Major League Baseball, it's at least 3, right? And I think that really, especially if you have like a big Ryder Cup year, then you're really just taking October off and you're back at that. That's a lot. I
wanted September off for Ryder Cup, President's Cup, and I would have liked to have actually taken almost like the NFL playoffs off, like, you know what I mean? And not even compete with that, but it made it too tough for me.
Well, your point about like, if you're global, the NFL, it's not, it doesn't matter as much. I think that one thing that I've always wanted them to do, and I don't know how tied to the date the RNA is, I think ending the year with the Open Championship or ending the season with the Open Championship is super special.
Weather's too risky. The weather is just too risky then.
In August?
Yeah, it starts getting, end of the year it starts getting worse, but where they've got it, I think, is the best chance for weather, especially if you go to Scotland and places like that. Now, if you're in the south of England, fine, but anywhere north you start battling.
I admittedly thought my schedule, French Open, Spanish Open, ends with a little bit of a whimper. Now, if that's, maybe it's Valderrama. I mean, it would be awesome if it was the Open Championship that like was your finale, but yeah, I think know what to do.
I would try to switch those 2 months if possible, right? Where you have like European summer, French Open, Spanish Open, Irish Open, whatever, and then try to end with Scottish and Open. I don't know about the dates and the weather. I don't know if that would completely work out.
There's a reason why Wimbledon's in July.
Yeah. It was mostly good. I think I might start the year in Australia, though. I might start it in December and then move. I don't know how you would fit in like the Asia, Africa, India type thing. Right. Because I like the Middle East to Phoenix, LA to Players Bay Hill. I mean, it's really good. I really like it a lot. Canadian Open might be a little early.
Yeah, it's usually in June, right?
Canada in May might be dicey.
We gotta find a location that would be able to host that. But
you could swap Memorial and and Canadian Open.
That's true.
Look, I think it's really good, actually, considering the concept, because for the most part, you got your heavy hitter events in the U.S. still there, and when you're talking about November, December, January, you're competing with football, but you're on the other side of the world. So Americans are going to be watching those anyway. That's just the reality of the situation. And that is a concern to me. Like when you start going to your sponsors, if they're even important, maybe PIF just funds the whole thing. I don't know. But you start going to sponsors, and like Rory also mentioned, we need corporate America involved, but it has to be global. Is that a conflict? You go to Australia. Is an event or two events in Australia enough to captivate that market? 1 or 2 events in a year. You go to Tokyo for, once in the year. Is it enough to captivate the market? And at the other end of the spectrum, I get one's better than none, but are you missing out on potentially more growth in the American market? Okay, I've always believed that you got to develop your fan base and you got to develop a core and you got to treat them well, right? Hug your core. And when the US tour starts going around the world, those events suffer a little bit. It's worked on the PGA Tour because they've typically been in football season in the fall, which is where I think it works in this, but I just have some concerns about the global aspect of it in general.
I think the counter to that, Craig, is that they're all like Farmers is out, Wells Fargo's like they're already removing themselves from the situation, right? And that happens. That's not like a new thing. I don't know how much it's tied to the purses going up and all that, but I think they've already built up the fan base, right? Like this is a unification of the fan bases that have been built up. I think the last thing that I have, Rick, is how do you envision like the sort of like the winner of the World Golf Tour being crowned? Let's say you ended at the Open Championship. Is there enough interest in who wins the overall race to St. Andrews or whatever we're calling it? Because like the Tour Championship to me is just it's not working as like a end of year type. Yeah, there you go. Is there enough interest during a major week where you're like, oh, this sort of side story, I actually do care about this because it's a major week?
Josh, throw my screen back up there. Sorry, I closed it out a little too late. So I don't know the answer to that. What I planned was just no playoffs. Like I think they kind of whiff. We talk about the major championships being the important ones. So I just kind of did this like what I believe F1 does, which is as the season goes on, you are accumulating points depending on what your finishing position is. At the end of the year, whoever has the most points is your world champion. If Max Verstappen runs away with the world championship with 3 races to go, race better, right? Be faster. Yeah. If Scotty Scheffler runs away with the world championship with 3 events to go, guess what? There's still an Open Championship and a Claret Jug that's going to be given away.
Now you sound like Rory to some of the members in the meeting the one time. He's like, just play better. You'll sort yourselves out.
It's true, and I'm with you. I'm with that, Rick. I agree with you on that. I don't think it should. There shouldn't. To me, there shouldn't. I think one of the hard things about the Tour Championship is that there shouldn't be anything post. It feels weird to have something post Open Championship.
Yeah. And
it just gets a little lost in the shuffle. The one thing I would say is that there's a lack of diversity in the format, like no match play. I think there's room to introduce some things like that, especially if you've got a pretty set number of like, hey, these are the guys for the year. Let's go, go do match play or whatever. And you could easily turn those events into match play.
Any one of those could be a match play. The other thing I did with the points is there's no same number of points, so every spot matters, and I'm only giving out points to the top 20. If you finish, like I don't care if you finish 37th on any, like I don't care. Like you've got to earn points, go finish inside the top 20, earn your points that way, add them up at the end of the year.
One other thing, majors still full field.
That's for the majors to decide, right? The Masters, they set their own criteria now. They're going to continue to set their own criteria, right? I don't care.
So you might have a world where not all the top 80 are playing in the Masters.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll take
now. What if is it strange to you if, let's say this was going on this year and Justin Thomas was relegated and gets into the Masters and wins the Masters. Mm-hmm. He's playing the whole year on a second tier tour.
He'd be on the PGA Tour or the.
So there's no in season. This is one season. You get a full season.
In my world, there's not. if you want to put in check marks and say, hey, we'll do mini relegations after every major, right? At the quarter pole and the half
Reshuffle.
3/4 pole, right? Then sure, I'm open to it. But in my world, you play the whole year.
Or I think
All
if you can make a very
Simple.
easy, like if you play your way into a major and win the major, you're I don't know.
You could
But
have
you'd want to keep like whatever your set number is, I think. So somebody would have to get bumped out. But this is
I
like
don't mind the
easy to
simplicity
understand.
of it. Right.
Right. I kept going back to thinking what you say, KP, which is like the PGA Tour for the last 70 years has been making updates to their code, and like they're fixing bugs, which solves this problem, but like now it causes more bugs, and like it's so true. And we just when you have the most vocal player in the world, Rory McIlroy, proposing something like this, I think you have to take it seriously.
Yeah,
I'm taking it seriously.
There's a few overtures that are coming from the McIlroy camp last week. I was like, okay. Anyway, next
Rick,
year this week.
I have been against a world tour for a long time and still am. But your schedule would work. If they did that, exactly what you said, it would not bother me.
Okay. Would this bother you? Because here are the top 80. It's Scotty Scheffler to Keith Mitchell. So on the hair of their chinny chin chins, Aaron Rye, Lucas Glover, Luke List, Sergio Garcia, Adam Svensson, and Keith Mitchell get in.
Steve Stricker too.
Which
That's
cool. We might have to make an adjustment for that.
He might not want to do that, right? I mean, I guess he would if it was a lot of money, but like, does he want to play? I don't know. So yeah, we'd have to have some adjustments.
I know he's about to go for surgery, but is Bernard Langer on there because he should be there too?
He's not in the dating off top 80. I think I don't know what you would. Yeah, I don't know how you would rank them, but once you get to 81 or 101 or whatever, it's like, yeah, just play a little better. I don't.
It starts to matter a little less.
Yeah.
Whether it from the fans' perspective, whether Lucas Glover is in or Michael Kim is in, is a small difference.
This is a great group, though. I mean,
it's a killer group.
I'm in.
It's a really good group. I mean, it's obviously like all the PGA Tour guys, and you get the big 13 back from Liv, and you get like Højgaard, Olesen, Matthew Pavone, the other Højgaard. Like it's.
I think what's interesting, Rick, is like, and this is the thing that we haven't talked about. I joke that we're going to talk about this for an hour. We might actually talk about it for an hour. Is there's no room for Tiger and Phil.
For sure.
Right. And I think that's kind of odd, but also I'm kind of okay. I don't know.
You don't have 4 sponsor exemptions in these events?
No, hell no. Get that. That is such garbage. It's such garbage.
Think, KP, they could conceivably still play major championship, so you'd still get them.
Yeah,
but this is too competitive, which is crazy to say, but it's too competitive for Tiger. It's too competitive for Phil.
And how sick would it be to see like Phil grinding on the Corn Ferry, trying to get back to the.
He's crazy enough to do it.
So that's what I'm saying. It would be awesome.
Yeah, say goodbye to Tiger, there, bro.